Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will call the meeting to order. For the record, the mayor and members of City Council will now adjourn for a closed executive session pursuant to Florida State Statute 447.605 regarding labor negotiations. The closed session will be held in the city manager's conference room on the second floor of City Hall. The executive session will be attended by myself, Mayor Andy Ross, Vice Mayor Meredith Abel, Council members James Chambers, Allison Fernandez, and Gil Schister, City Manager Carlos Bahia, Deputy City Attorney Ernie Mueller, Fire Chief Ian Kemp, Assistant Finance Director Jennifer Newman, and Human Resources Director Antonio Nazario. So we will now adjourn to the second floor. Well, good evening, everybody. The council had convened a closed executive session at 5 o'clock, and we have returned from the closed executive session, so therefore we are ending that meeting and are opening the City Council meeting. So welcome, everybody, to the June 18th meeting of the Temple Terrace City Council. It's nice to see so many people with us tonight. I'd like to remind you to please silence your electronic devices, and if you would, please stand and join us in the invocation and the pledge. Lord, we begin our meeting tonight in gratitude for the blessings you bestow on our amazing city. We thank you for our freedom and pray for all those throughout the world who suffer oppression or tyranny. We pray for those in our city who are sick or struggling with economic hardship. May they feel your comfort and the support of our community. Finally, we pray during this election year that you will help us heal the divisions in our country and work together in promoting the American ideals of freedom and justice for all. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and good evening again. For those of you who don't normally join us at our council meetings, we have a new tradition that we've been doing for, well, I don't know, a year and a half or so now, and we begin each meeting with a historical or interesting or fun fact concerning our city or the region. And so we trade duties every council meeting. It rotates down the dais, and tonight I'm happy or sad to report that that duty fell on me. And so tonight I want to talk about Temple Terrace and our love affair with our trees. If you've been in Temple Terrace for any length of time, you know that Temple Terrace is a city that is in love with our tree canopy. And we, all of us, shudder whenever a tree is destroyed by a storm or hit by lightning or removed by development. And so I wanted to back up from that a little bit and discuss how our tree canopy is doing and what we're doing to ensure its continued health and prosperity. And actually there's a lot to this. There's more than you would think. It's not just let's go find a tree and hug, right? So If those of you who know some of the history of Temple Terrace know that as much as we love our oak canopy, and we do, that's really not the original what Temple Terrace looked like back in the day. And if you look at pictures, some of them are up here, but you look at the back in the Bertha Palmer days and the Maud Fowler days, most of what is now Temple Terrace was scrubby pine forest. It wasn't lush live oaks like it is today. So much of what you see today is not really what it looked like back when they first came here. It was scrubby pines for the most part. And also remember that we were home to the largest citrus grove in the world. So we had like 5,000 acres where there were no trees except orange trees, right? So we didn't have the trees that we have today. And if you look back in the, the 30s, 40s, 50s, when at post-World War II era, when there's a lot of development in Temple Terrace, you'll recognize some of the streets and houses, but there are no trees. It looks like they just built a house on the surface of the moon, right? There's no trees. So the tree canopy that we enjoy today is largely a product of plantings that occurred after the orange grove days, right, post-World War II. So some of this I'm going to cite today is a published article. It's a scholarly article written by a Temple Terrace native named Stephen Fernandez. Native is a resident. I don't think he's a native. He's a Temple Terrace resident named Stephen Fernandez. Stephen's a great guy. He is a researcher and professor at the University of South Florida. He's also the city's appointee to the Planning Commission. Really, really interesting guy. And his specialty is something called LIDAR, which is light distance and ranging. It's like radar or sonar, only it's done with light, with lasers. And there's something called aerial LIDAR, where they fly over and they map. It's really tricky because they have to hold the plane at a really constant altitude, and it measures, within much smaller than square feet. I mean, it's like point. And they can get precise, exact elevations, and they scan and map the entire state of Florida. They've been scanning the state of Florida for over 20 years now. So most of Florida, in fact, I think all of Florida has been scanned, and at this point scanned several times. What's neat and important about doing it several times over a period of time is you can compare the previous scans to the older scans. And that's exactly what Stephen did in the city of Temple Terrace, is he looked at the tree canopy using LIDAR data from 2007, which is the first time Temple Terrace was scanned, and then 2017 was the last time it was scanned. This article is published in 2020, citing the data from 2017. So it's 7 years old at this point, so keep that in mind. But the trends are good. So what Stephen found was, comparing the 2007 data to the 2017 data, was the city limits at that time, at 2017 city limits, it's changed a little bit now, city of Temple Terrace actually gained, what do you think? How much tree canopy do you think we gained? Anybody got a guess? An acre, 5 acres, say?
20.
70. We actually gained 70 acres of tree canopy between 2007 and 2017. Now that's a combination of growth of the existing trees and the planting of new trees that are over 12 feet high. 70 acres in the city of Temple Terrace was gained in that 10 years. Now keep in mind, this is 7-year-old data, right? So we've probably gained at this point even more than that. But there's a flip side. They also discovered something that was kind of unintended. He looked at where there were tree canopy losses, and there's a pattern to this. And one of the patterns he discovered was after World War II, there was a lot of development. A lot of properties were developed. In fact, 30% of the properties in Temple Terrace were developed prior to 1970, 30%. Most of that development during that era involved the planting of laurel oaks, because they're a faster growing oak. They provide shade and become mature trees faster, so people planted laurel oaks when they put their homes in. Laurel oaks have a lifespan of 50 to 70 years, so do the math. Guess what's happening now? They're dying, they're old, right? They're not like live oaks, they don't last as long. And so the laurel oaks are dying in the city, and he actually picked up on this pattern with the LiDAR scans. And there's even hot spots in the city, like on Druid Hills and Cliff, I think was one of the hot spots where we've had laurel oaks dying. So, not to belabor the point, but in 2017, right, over 40% of the city of Temple Terrace had a tree canopy. Over half, or not over half, over 40%, right? Which is pretty good if you compare us to other cities of our size. That's a pretty good number. So there's some scientific evidence that our tree planting program, our tree under our arborist, our tree management, our tree mitigation strategies that we employ when we have development are working, right? So it's working. I think we need to stay the course. There's no talk about us not staying the course, but it's working. It's not just anecdotal. So I want everybody to kind of remember that when we talk about new development. We all love to see new development because it brings new business and new growth and new taxes that we can spend to build parks and amenities and so forth. So it's a good thing when we see growth, but we all cringe, right, because they're cutting a tree down, right? And I get it. I cringe too when you see a big tree that's come down. But I want everybody to remember that we have a healthy, modern urban forest management system. And this biodiversity, by planting different species of trees, magnolias, different types of oaks, and we have trees of different ages and levels of maturity, that's not a bad thing either, right? And so that's how modern forestry works. And I've got a lot more to talk about because actually this caused me to say, well, I wonder how we're doing compared to the rest of the country, and there's a lot of stuff about this. But it's not all doom and gloom. If you're a tree lover, as I'm sure everybody here probably is, it's not always a gloomy picture. Even in the United States, it's not doom and gloom. Now, there's some problem areas, but we're actually doing, in today's world, pretty good compared to, every year since 1940, the tree canopy in the United States has increased. We have more trees now than we did 100 years ago. So we're actually doing a pretty good job as a nation. Now, I know you're going to go somewhere and say, well, they just clear cut there. Okay, there's exceptions, but I mean, as a whole, our country's doing very, very well. So anyway, I don't know if that was fun or interesting, but I'm done, so I'm good. Okay. First item of business is a proclamation for National Waste and Recycling Workers Week, and we're going to invite our Public Works Director, Jason Warrenfeldt, to the podium. Good evening, Jason. For those of you who have not met Jason, he's one of our newer directors, a fantastic guy, really cleaning up a lot of things in the Public Works Department, and we're really thrilled to have him on board, and so I'm glad you're here. So the proclamation reads, whereas the nation celebrates the week of June 17th as National Waste and Recycling Workers Week, and according to the Centers for Disease Control, the eradication of many diseases in the Western world is due in large part to a higher public sanitation standards resulting from effective garbage disposal. The men and women employed by the City of Temple Terrace Sanitation Collection and Hauling Division serve our community, making significant contributions to the safety, health, and welfare of citizens. Sanitation staff contribute to a tidy and clean community. The City of Temple Terrace values and celebrates our waste and recycling workers, trash collectors, dumpster haulers, street cleaners, and all others employed in the sanitation industry to serve residents and local businesses. And I think you know from your short time here how much our city loves our public works employees. So I'm proud to say that I, Andy Ross, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, do hereby set aside June 17th to 22nd, 2024 as National Waste and Recycling Workers Week. So thank you, Jason. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. I want to highlight our city sanitation a little bit by the numbers. City Council and staff know this, but for the residents, it's good information, I think. Sanitation has 16 full-time dedicated staff. They're led by their manager, Joe Munoz, who unfortunately was on vacation this week, so I stepped in for him. Sanitation is split into two functions. They have a commercial section and a residential section. The residential operates 5 or 6 trucks on a daily average, serving the residents. They visit their homes multiple times a week, doing the residential solid waste collection. They do the recycling and they also do their yard waste, their yard debris. The commercial division, which operates 7 or 8 trucks on a daily basis, consists of the front loads and the roll-offs, and then the boom truck, which does bulk pickup. On the front load side, which is the most active outside of residential for the commercial, we have over 200, the city has over 250 commercial accounts for front load. That has over 330 dumpsters out for service, and these drivers haul over 700 pick up 700 times a week on front load service. So they do a fair amount. The roll-off drivers have over 70 roll-off compactor containers that they service weekly. And then the solid waste division in 2023 hauled just around 22,000 tons of waste from the city, with 400 tons of recycling products that were removed from the city. So those are good numbers. That's a lot of waste. That's a good amount of recycling. This year, what we're seeing in the calendar year, not the fiscal year, we're averaging a little over 2,000 tons a month. So the numbers are up. And all that, I mean, great staff of men and women that serve the residents and the businesses. And I'm happy that they've dedicated a week to those workers. So.
Very good. Thank you, Jason. Thanks for being here.
All right, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for your work. Next, we have some honored guests tonight. I'd like to invite up our Jonathan Rushnack and Georges Gonzalez, two of our esteemed residences. Thank you for being here. We have a proclamation for Pride Month, and I want to thank you guys for coming out this evening. I know you're both very busy, so I appreciate it. It says, whereas the City of Temple Terrace observes Pride Month to honor the history and support the rights of all citizens to experience equality and freedom from discrimination. All people, regardless of age, gender, race, color, religion, marital status, national origin, sexual orientation, or physical challenges, have the right to be treated based on their intrinsic value as human beings. The City of Temple Terrace accepts and welcomes people of diverse backgrounds and believes a diverse population leads to a more vibrant community. Temple Terrace will continue to be a city where all people, regardless of their sexual orientation, are treated with dignity and respect. Temple Terrace does hereby recognize and salute that diversity and welcomes and embraces the inclusion of all members of the community as part of what makes Temple Terrace an amazing city. Now, therefore, I, Andy Ross, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Temple Terrace, Florida, do hereby proclaim the month of June 2024 as Pride Month. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Mayor Ross, for having us out here. I mean, as long-term residents of the city, it's great to see how far we've come and how much we enjoy living here. So thank you very much.
Georges?
Same. I feel like I'm at work.
I've never known you to be short on words.
Right?
Very good. See you.
3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
All right, our next item of business is a Centennial Celebration Committee update, and our chair of that committee, Nancy Hudson, is here to give us an update. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Ross. Thank you, council members. I'm here to give you a quick update, and I have a little presentation.
just to share where we are on our committee. We've done a really good job. We have a great committee working really hard to try to make 2025 just a great celebration. So I just want to remind you guys of the objectives that we had, which was to plan, coordinate, market, and secure sponsorships for the city celebration, to develop all of the plans, gather community input, make recommendations, and implement the celebration plans, lead the fundraising initiatives, solicit the sponsorships, and coordinate with the city staff on the marketing efforts. And I really wanted to thank the committee because we do have a great group of people who've been working for quite a while on this. I think we've been at it about 18 months now. So I want to thank Julie Almeida, Sherry Donahue, Cheryl Mooney, Marissa Robinson, our city liaisons, Corey Collins and Joelle Duarte, and of course James Chambers, who's our council support. So just as a reminder, our plans are to do an overall city celebration for all year next year, from January through December. And we're trying to brand the current events and bring in some new events to really be part of that celebration. We hope to have branded banners and decor and signage throughout the city, and we're working with Joelle to make sure that that happens in a really meaningful way, that people really know that we're celebrating and that there's something special going on. We have branded merchandise, including my new t-shirt, which you can see here. And we have some house flags that are already completely designed and ready to go, and we will have those ready very soon. Our committee member, Julie Almeida, did design all of these, and she did a great job. We're really lucky to have such a talented graphic artist on the team, so it's making it look great. We would love to do a 100-year Christmas ornament, and we currently don't have a committee or a group that has taken that on. We thought we did, but we don't. So if anybody has any suggestions or would like to own that piece of it, we'd still think that that would be a really meaningful part of a promotional activity. And again, we're trying to have all of these things ready by October of 2024 so people can buy them for Christmas gifts and be really ready for the celebration of 25. Let's see, our monthly events. We do have something planned pretty much every month with the current events and other things that will have the Centennial overlay. And we are working on an online taste of Temple Terrace that will really support the restaurants and kind of promote all the unique things that we have. And we'll launch that with the website on our webpage, hopefully soon. We have our sponsorship form completed, which I think you might have a copy of in your packet. We do have verbal confirmations from the Women's Club and the Temple Terrace Arts Council as $5,000 sponsors, which will help support our murals specifically. And then we did apply for the City Catalyst Grant for $2,500, which I haven't heard, but I hope we'll get. So. Our signature event has taken a bit of a turn. We had originally talked about doing something on the golf course a la the 4th of July event, and now we've decided to turn it more towards the River Hills Park. We do, again, it's to be a free community event that everyone can be included in, and we just thought it might be nice to have something that was different, very special for the Centennial, make it something that we could own, maybe something that could be continued. So music and vendors, maybe it has a battle of the bands. This one still needs a lot of work, and we're working very closely with Corey to pull this all together. So by the time we have our next update in October, we'll be able to give you a lot more specifics. But the date is May 3rd, 2025, which is a Saturday, and it will be, again, a big community-free event. We've done a lot of work on the muralists, which we talked about last time. What we're trying to do is to create something that has some nostalgia, something about the future, something about the uniqueness of Temple Terrace, and really make some destination murals here in Temple Terrace that not only our community would love to see, but people will drive here just to take pictures of. So you can see we had over 25 artists submit to be part of it, and we've selected these 5 artists to join us, and these are the areas that their murals will be presented in. And again, we're just hoping to have that, we're looking for sponsors hard, so hopefully we'll be able to cover a lot of the costs of the murals, and we hope to have the final budget approved so that they can commence work in January, so that all of these murals would be completed by that signature celebration the beginning of May. Again, working super closely with Corey because there's scaffolding and cleaning and lots of other things that have to take place, but she's all over it. We've also been working with Marissa Robinson, another committee member. She is working on a comprehensive 100-year timeline. What we're hoping to do is either create some sort of 3D model, cool banner, something that we can take around the city to different events. It could be displayed in the library or at the rec center. That can be just something very meaningful that will be special and unique throughout the year. Marissa's done a really great job, great pictures about people, about history, and just make something that will last long after the celebration's over. We're also really focused on the school involvement. We're dedicating our whole October meeting to inviting all the principals, hopefully some teachers, so that we can spend some time talking about what they need to make sure that the schools are very involved with the program for 2025, talk about what educational outcomes they need, what materials they need, how we can help them brand some of their activities so that all the kids feel really, really included in the overall celebration. So next steps for us are to get that budget approved when you guys do that at the end of the year, and then again, really work on the coordination of those murals. We're working in the next 2 months or so to really over-communicate to the clubs and groups so that they make sure they know what's going on, that they know how to participate, that they have thought about their activities for the coming year and how they can be even more involved. Working closely with Joelle Duarte on the decor celebration plans and the new website page because we think that'll be really helpful in communicating all that we're doing. Again, working very closely with Corey on that signature event and the distribution plan for all of the promotional t-shirts and so forth. Can you get them at the rec center and the library and maybe here, the different places that can happen. Again, really focused on that school involvement and helping them produce their needed materials. Really want to encourage community support. We haven't had a tremendous attendance at our meetings. We've had a couple of diehard fans that come every time, but people would love to come. People have ideas. I keep hearing through the grapevine, what about this? Or how have you guys thought of that? So we'd love to encourage everybody to come. Our meetings are the first Thursday of every month at 5 p.m. and we'd love to have more involvement and more ideas. So our next update will be from your new chair, and that'll be in October of 2024. So I'm happy to entertain any questions or any thoughts that you guys have before I close it up.
Thank you, Mrs. Hudson. Council?
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez.
So the Hillsborough County has a cultural assets committee that does award grants. And what the focus is are community cultural and artistic endeavors, activities, especially events that are highlighting the community and open to the community. And this seems like the signature event would fall within that purview. I know that the grant window should be opening sometime in early August, but there are 2 grant cycles, so I don't know if the early August award would cover into May or if that would come out in the second cycle. But I would encourage the committee to look at the Hillsborough County website and see if that's a possibility. Also, there is, I know James would probably talk about it, but there's also an art committee for Hillsborough County that does award some grants.
Great. Thank you. I will definitely follow up.
No questions. I have a comment later on, but no questions.
Questions?
No question, just great presentation.
Go ahead with your comment.
Council, your Centennial Committee is fantastic. These people work hard. They've been working hard. They have great ideas. Thank you very much to you and your committee.
Thank you.
So wait. You didn't get me.
I'm sorry.
So I have more of a comment than a question too, and we've talked about this before, but it's become really apparent to all of us who have struggled for these interesting or historical facts it was easy at the beginning and now it's getting harder every time we have to do it. But it seems like there's a lot of stuff from the 1920s. You know, there's a lot of 1925 stuff, a lot of things about Bertha Palmer and Maud Fowler, and then things kind of go dark for 4 decades. And, until the 70s, you don't see much of anything. And ironically, that's when most of the city was built. And yet, there's not a whole lot from the the post-World War II era was huge. And yet, it's like this black chapter, we just have nothing on it. And so I'm hoping that the committee can resurrect some of that because, at this point, if you've been around Temple Terrace for a long time, you know about the Orange Grove, you know about Bertha Palmer, the stories kind of get redundant, but nobody knows about, 1940s and 50s. And so I'm hoping that Marissa and you guys are able to uncover some of that.
Pass that note along.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you for being here. Next, we have a board appointment. There is a vacancy on the Hillsborough County Maritime Law Advisory Committee. The city received one application from Eric Kravitz, who I don't see here. Mr. Kravitz is the current, well, this is an expired term. He currently served on the committee, and his term expired on May the 3rd. He also serves on the BOA, the Board of Adjustment, and the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. He's our one applicant. So is there a motion?
I move to approve Eric Kravitz for the Hillsborough County Maritime Law Advisory Committee.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. If Mr. Kravitz is watching, we thank you for your continued service. Council, has everybody had an opportunity to review our minutes of our June 4th meeting? And if so, is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion or corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No nays. Minutes are adopted. Next are persons wishing to be heard on items not listed on the agenda or items on the consent agenda. There are forms in the back of the room, just inside the door on that little table, if you wish to address the council. I currently have no requests to speak, nor do I see a big stampede back there to get a form, so I'm going to assume nobody wishes to address the council. Okay. Next, council, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good. Consent agenda is adopted. Next is a public hearing and resolution approving the City of Temple Terrace Community Investment Tax Project List. And I will open the public hearing and ask the city manager, Mr. Bahia, to explain.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. At the last council meeting, Deputy County Administrator Greg Horwedel was here to present on the community investment tax and the interlocal agreement that the city council approved that evening, allowing for the measure to renew the CIT to be put on the November ballot. As part of that process, the city council has to adopt a list of projects to be used against the proposed revenues that would be generated by the 15 years of the new CIT, were it to be renewed. Those projects I will go through this evening for the public as part of the hearing. So, and these are, at this point, obviously this is a 15-year program, so these projects will change, or could change. But right now, this is our best estimate as to uses of those projected dollars. So, first item is a public safety building. And actually, I have the presentation. I just need to tweak it. Public safety building that we've talked about here, $17,500,000 projected costs. Also, police vehicles, $7,200,000. Police equipment would be $200,000. Fire Station 3, including a training tower building, would be $9,500,000. A fire apparatus or vehicles would be about $6 million over the course of the 15 years. Fire equipment would be about $500,000. In the Leisure Services Department, we're looking at parks improvements. Again, these would be funds to acquire playground equipment and other amenities and make safety improvements to our parks. We're looking at about $1 million there. Potential new park construction, if we wanted to build new outdoor recreational facilities, including playing fields, boardwalks, etc., $5 million projected. We also have improvements to existing recreational facilities to enhance things like our swimming pools, our fitness and exercise facilities, tennis equipment, etc., $6 million. And then improvements to the library, including new flooring and expansion of the office area and study rooms, projected at $750,000. And then improvements to general government facilities, including City Hall, the Public Works Complex, $300,000. That adds up to $53,950,000, which is more or less what the projected revenue would be from the CIT. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bahia. We'll go to public comment. Are there members of the public who wish to comment? Mr. Loeb. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Nice to see you all again. There's a couple of things that I noticed. I was reading the list that the city manager was talking about, and there's a couple of things that maybe you might want to think about to put on the list. First of all, it would be a city bus for your residents as they all get toward aging. They might want to transfer around through a bus through the city. The second thing I was thinking about is solar paneling. Over the course of time, the electric is going to keep going up and up and up and up for running your buildings, and that eventually, I believe, like televisions, that prices are going to go down on solar paneling as there's more competition, and of course, as the price of electric goes up. So you might want to think along those lines too and add that to your possible list, especially when you think in terms up to 2041. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loeb. Are there other members of the public who wish to comment on this? Okay, seeing none, council members, questions for Mr. Bahia?
No.
No. Very good, thank you. In that case, I'll close the public hearing. And is there a motion to approve the project list?
Move to approve the project list, the Temple Terrace Community Investment Tax Project List.
Second.
Any discussion of the motion?
Well, the only thing I'd like to just say is that it's a list that would be, first, the community investment tax can only be used for actual investment. It cannot be used for any ongoing expenses, but also this project list is not set in stone. It's just our preliminary list, and as time goes on, if the tax does pass and it is in effect into the future, I mean, we can change this list as the needs of the city change, that's all.
That's a good point. Thank you, Councilman. Other comments, discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? No nays. Resolution is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Bahia. Next is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Half Associates, Inc. for design and engineering services for Riverside Park in the amount of $488,066.55. And Leisure Services Director Carl Langfeld is here to explain.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Carl Langfeld, Leisure Services Director. During the May 21 Community Redevelopment Agency meeting, I made a presentation outlining steps taken to select a firm to perform design and engineering services for Riverside Park. Additionally, concept ideas were presented, and at that meeting, the CRA voted to move the project forward to City Council. The current Riverside Park was constructed in 2009. This park was one of the initial projects to kick off the city's downtown redevelopment efforts. The vision of this park was to provide recreational amenities to the new residents moving into the new downtown area. Directly to the east of Riverside Park is approximately 4.8 acres of city-owned, undeveloped riverfront property. This property is a mixture of upland and wetland areas. Through the city's redevelopment efforts, there have been multiple concepts for this property, including a cultural arts center, senior living facility, and restaurant usages. Following unsuccessful efforts to engage with a developer to bring forward a viable project, City Council elected to remove the property for sale listing and move forward with development of this property into a new waterfront park. The vision for the development of the vacant Riverside parcel is to link it with the existing Riverside Park to the west and to the Springdale Pond property to the north. Linking and developing these three parcels together creates a cohesive park space and provide pedestrian access from the south side of the city to the city's downtown area. Conceptual ideas for the new park include a waterfront boardwalk and fishing pier, canoe and kayak launch, nature observation tower, picnic and green space areas. Additionally, pedestrian footbridges over the existing canal to connect with the existing Riverside Park and improvements to River Hills Drive to provide safe pedestrian crossings to the Springdale Pond area. Additionally, the design firm will be tasked with providing parking facilities for park users. Earlier this year, this fiscal year, Leisure Services staff were tasked with seeking a qualified firm for the through a request for qualifications. Initial advertisement soliciting for qualifications for the project was published on December 2nd of 2023. 9 firms submitted proposals to be the selected firm for this project. 4 firms were shortlisted, and ultimately Half Associates Incorporated was selected. Their selection was based on their extensive experience in developing park properties, incorporating waterfront and wetland areas into their design, and developing engineering and drainage structures, such as the Springdale Pond, into usable park spaces. Half's tasks will include, but are not limited to, surveying and geotechnical services, public engagement meetings, presentation to City Council, development of concept plans and construction documents, permitting, including coordination with third-party groups such as SwiftMud, EPC, and the Army Corps of Engineers, bidding assistance, and construction oversight. So tonight I'm here to request a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with Half Associates, Inc. in the amount of $448,066.55 for design and engineering services for Riverside Park.
Mr.
100
Langfield, do you want to restate the amount? I think you said it wrong.
$448,066.55.
We've got,
Two numbers different on my sheet.
Am I reading it wrong?
Well, the screen's different from what you're saying.
I've got 488.
But in action,
480
it's 448, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, I have a typo on my page. 488.
48 there.
Yes, my notes that I'm speaking off of has a typo on it. Excuse me.
Yeah, so which is the correct number?
488, 488 is the correct number.
Okay.
The notes that I'm reading off of, I typoed.
Okay.
And your
City
sub-accounts.
clerk, it looks as though, in the language of the resolution, though, it says 448. Is that because, does it all add up to four, is that why?
That's up to 448.
It all adds up to
125 and
88.
523 is 448.
Oh, boy, yes. 448,066.55. My apologies, I made an error in,
They're in somewhere.
let me see the correct number is 448,066.55 is the correct number.
Thank you. I'm just stepping into the future here a little bit. When the motion maker, please make sure you say the correct amount. Thank you, Mr. Langfeld. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this? Seeing none. Council member questions?
I have a question.
Council member Fernandez.
I don't know if it's for you or for the actual firm, but when the public input informational meetings are held, I know that building on this site, given that it's upland and lowland wetlands, that there will be restrictions about what can be built and how the access to the river can be constructed for the boat launch, the canoe launches, et cetera. Will that be part? Will the meetings be set where it's everybody just throw every idea in their head out, or will it be? Will there be some guidelines like, "Wow, that's a great idea, but we can't do that"?
There will be, in my conversations with the firm, they will be holding 2 public engagement meetings. The first engagement meeting will be an opportunity for, like you said, to throw the ideas at the wall and see what sticks and kind of garner a level of interest for different features that could be incorporated into the park. The second meeting will be a more focused meeting on what their design features that they gleaned from the first meetings where they were able to incorporate into the park and what can and can't work based on what they found following that first meeting.
Okay, so the second meeting will be the one to take the ideas and try to incorporate them into the design in a way that's allowable based on EPC and SwiftMud and all of the regulations that might be existing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's it.
Other questions? Councilmember Schischler.
All right, I have 2 questions. First one, what kind of deliverable due dates are we looking at for any of this?
When I spoke to the firm about timeframes, they're anticipating approximately 12 months to get through the design and into the bidding process.
Okay. Second question, I noticed you have the amounts broken down between 2 accounts. The significance?
One account is the CIT dollars,
Okay,
and the
that's
second
cool.
account is
That's
the
cool.
TIF funds.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Questions? Good. Okay, very good. Thank you. Is there a motion?
I move to approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Half Associates, Inc. for design and engineering services for the Riverside Park in the amount of $448,066.55.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? I just have one quick comment. I did hear there was a concern of somebody in the city, I don't even know who, but it reached me today that they were under the impression that we're gonna like clear cut the whole shore of the river and make it like a beach. And I just want to assure the public that that is not what we're planning to do. I don't think they wouldn't let us do that anyway. But the idea is to put a boardwalk, but to maintain the natural beauty of the river shore. So we're not creating a beach here. So we're very, goes back to the trees that we talked about at the beginning, right? We're not clear cutting cypress trees. So if there's one person that's concerned about that, there's probably others out there that are too. So that is not our intent. So very good. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No nays. Thank you, Mr. Langfield. Next item is a resolution adopting a revised site plan and building elevations for property located at 13102 North 56th Street. And our Community Development Director, Mike Sherman, is here to explain. Good evening, Mr. Sherman.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
The council. So tonight we have going to hear again, I guess it's a continued hearing from last city council meeting for a site plan to consider where there was some elevations changes, building elevations, and some minor site plan changes after the council approved the site plan and building elevations back in 2022. So here's I know the council knows where it is, but it's at the corner of it's the Salah Commercial Plaza, and it's at the corner of East 131st Street and North 56th Street. The property is about 0.61 acres, so a little over half an acre. The zoning is commercial general. The future land use map category on the property is C commercial. The approvals they have at this point are site, civil, and building elevation plans. A little bit of background. It was approved back in June of 2022 for a one-story, 7,200 square feet, multi-tenant structure. The elevations were approved as part of the site plan approval. There's 24 parking spaces located behind the structure. As the council knows, the building is pushed up to the street. There's a 6-foot landscape buffer on the west side of the property. Separates the residential uses of landscaping and a fence, and the access is off 131st Avenue. And I did that again. There we go. So these were the approved elevations that the council looked at back in 2022. And after that, the approval, the building elevations in the site plan were modified a bit. The building permit was issued with the revised elevation plans. At that point, when we realized that we reached out to Dr. Salah, he immediately came forward and we started working together to try and get a set of plans and building elevations that the council would approve. We met with the applicant, worked very closely with them, back to council for consideration at the last meeting, and then they remanded it back for tonight to do some more work. So this is a site plan of the property. The modification on this one is the handicap parking space was relocated. There was some modifications to the stormwater management system as well. And here's the modified building elevations. Let's see, I can't tell too much there, but they include relocation of the handicap space, stormwater management control to the site plan itself, modifications to the building elevations, include these. Wanted to go on these. These are what the contractor gave us to show, sort of detail what changes were done. And this is the changes to the building elevations of the property. And here's building elevation modifications called out on the elevation itself. So one of the discussions we had at the last meeting was what is the facade going to look like? And this is what the applicant wants to propose, a facade film on the property. And you can see that on a number of properties throughout the Tampa Bay area, especially in the Wesley Chapel area, for some of the buildings that are pushed up to the street where the building frontage just faces the parking lot like this. And this is kind of what it looks like. You can see it's like a window film type material that they put on the building elevations. And that, I believe, is what the applicant wants to use on the building. They're in the audience tonight, so they can probably, the contractor might be able to give you a little better information on the facade film. Here's views from the street, how it is right now. That's the east side of the building facing North 56th Street. Here's the south and the north side of the building. The changes they're proposing, I believe, would put an additional window on that side facing 131st Street. Here's the west side of the parking lot, looking out into the building, looking into the parking lot. Here is the north side of the building. Excuse me, that's the stormwater system in the DRC review. We're recommending approval. We think the applicant has worked hard to come up with elevations that we hope meets the council's approval. There's one condition we're still having, and that's the modification of the stormwater plans are approved by the Southwest Florida Water Management District and the city engineer prior to the issuance of the CO. We've received a letter from the Water Management District that says that the stormwater system is operational and meets their requirements. We still need to get the city engineer to sign off on that prior to CO. I can answer any questions or attempt to that the council may have. The applicants from the audience tonight, they may want to address the council as well.
Mr. Sherman, before we do that, can you put the slide back up that shows the proposed east side elevation with the call-out boxes of what's been,
I can.
the proposed changes are?
Yes, sir. We may need to pull the applicant.
That one. All right, so let me leave that up for a second, please. Okay. Council, is it okay if I move to another slide now?
But just to confirm,
Yep.
the top is what is actually facing the street or facing the parking lot?
That's facing 56.
Okay,
That's correct. Yes, ma'am. 56.
okay, that's,
Now, could you go to the photograph of the west side of the building?
I can.
Oh, was that? That one. Okay. Very good. Applicant like to say, welcome, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Councillor. JD Al-Sabbagh, Sycamore Engineering. I am the civil engineer of record to the project. As Mr. Chairman indicated, last April we meet with the modification to that elevation from previously approved. And after that, Mr. Chairman, our councillor, and the city attorney with the owner and contractor had met and came up with a proposed change, which is 4 items as listed. So, which is, it make more improvement to the elevation, as you see. So, you know, as you see, we already have been mature and improve this elevation accordingly. And I think to the point is looking for your approval on this.
Thank you, sir. Are there members of the public who wish to comment?
Can I speak, sir?
Yes, sir. Please approach the podium. We just need your name and city of residence first.
Muhammad Saleh. I'm the
Please, you have to.
and,
Okay, start over because we have to have it on record, please.
all right.
Good.
My name is Muhammad Saleh. I'm Dr. Saleh. I'm the one, they call me developer, but I'm just a neurologist trying to retire on that building peacefully. And I've never thought we're we're on the same page. I see what you see. I respect the aesthetic and the beauty of what Temple Terrace is trying to do, actually. We grew up on River Hills Drive with my boys, and we know the value of oak trees and the river and the aesthetic, especially when Temple Terrace downtown was developed, and how important it was. It took 10 years to reach a point of how we want that to look. So I promise you, this building will be beautiful. Especially I'm going to be in the corner practicing practical neurology where I treat migraine and cognitive decline and tremor, and next to my friend David, the owner of Ace Hardware Store, was eagerly waiting for me. We're going to also have an eye doctor. So I know the beauty of the building is essential, the way you drive by and see it, but also what the building is providing is also as important to the community. So neurology, wellness, 2,400 square feet of dentist care, 2 beautiful young ladies coming there, graduate of USF and UF. They want to do discounted dental care, pediatric care. So God's willing, that building will provide some beauty and functionality and service to the community at large. And we're hopefully will be there hanging out and enjoying it with your approval. Thank you. If you have any questions, by the way, one point I wanted to say, you know, at a certain age, you don't want to miss certain points. You have to make them before you say, oops, I should have said that. We really tried our best to provide the best look of the building. When I saw the building coming up, I ran to David. I said, David, what's this? We need more. Please raise the wall. Please hide the AC. We took the drainage system to the back. We moved the electrical power. Tico cost us $60,000 extra to move him and hide him. So we tried really to create front-back elevation that's almost identical. So hopefully we'll all enjoy that building.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much.
Clerk, you're not constrained by the 3 minutes, Doctor, if you have more to say. We didn't know you were the owner when you approached, so we set your timer for, we thought you were a member of the public, so you're not constrained by the 3 minutes.
No, I just felt like I need to say something about the functionality and the purpose of the building. It's trying to be irrelevant, not to retire. So you have to continue working until God's willing help whatever we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item?
Oh, can I have a second?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm taking advantage of you now. This is what neurologists do. And the last 24 square foot on the corner toward the south side, we have a young gentleman there want to propose a cafe. Elegant cafe with authentic beans from the mountains of Yemen and Ethiopia and Colombia. So if approved, that building also will have a very nice touch of that elegance that also will, I heard that we're trying to make Temple Terrace a destination, not just a local. So that will also give us some beauty and service that is unique.
What kind of cafe did you say?
It's
no, don't come up, but.
Yeah. It's authentic, it's called Yemeni cafe style. It's a fashion now where people don't like Dunkin' Donuts coffee anymore. I like it still, but Starbucks gave me palpitation, so I would rather eat something mild. It's authentic with their own pie and pastries, so it's going to be really a destination to visit, like downtown. So hopefully we'll add a flavor to professional.
Thank you, Doctor.
Please, thank you.
I know, one question too many, I know. Are there members of the public who wish to comment? Okay, council, are there questions of our staff or the petitioner? Yes.
I'd like more information on the window treatments that are going to be used, or the treatments going to be used on, I assume it's the east side, the east elevation.
The east side and I believe the south side will have some additional window treatments.
Correct.
Maybe
That's correct. J.D. Elsabar again, to the east side and the south side. Yes, sir.
What's it going to be? What are you doing?
So the forward change is applying Avery Denson face film to the existing metal door. That's the first thing. The same way apply to the existing, this is the first. The second is Fox window on the south elevation to match the existing center window between the control lines. So this is paint, the existing EIFS surrounded with lighter and contrast color. So this item gonna be done after you approved, which will be within few weeks or so. And he show you example, I think, of the material will be completed.
Can we go back and take a look at that? I just want to make sure what it is. Okay, now go back, go back,
Go back.
go back. I
To the-
think it's this.
So the red and the dark colors, that's the film.
Now, is this just going to go in the doors, or is it going to go on the wall, or the facade, or what?
To the window.
Just to,
I think.
well, we got, if I remember correctly, we got some door there at this point.
Can I come in?
Sure, I guess.
Because I worked on that. So the east elevation facing 56th Street already have a nice three door-like. One is the functional one and two next to it. These gonna be dressed to reflect glassy looking.
Okay,
And then the south elevation, we're gonna add two windows to the existing windows on each side, more like a foam, so it looks like four windows. A comment this young lady stated that we need more, when we met with her, that we need more windows so it'll reflect more beauty than just concrete facade. And that's what we're doing, really.
okay.
Thanks.
Anything
All
else?
right, okay.
Council member questions? Councilmember Vice Mayor Abe.
So just to be clear, it's not going to be red, right? It's going to be reflective like a mirror?
Yes.
Mr. Sherman, is that the same or similar material that we have on the Fountain Oaks? We have that building butts up to 56th Street too, and it looks like windows, but it's not.
They're faux windows, and they can be made a number of different ways, but
But it's the same idea.
same idea, yes.
So they'll look like windows instead of doors.
That's right. You'll see this kind of stuff on a lot of Dollar Gyms, too. They put faux windows up.
Out of what?
They put faux windows up in a lot of Dollar General stores
Oh,
as
Dollar
well, so,
General, okay.
same, there's a number of different ways to.
That's a bad comparison.
That's
That's not a good comparison.
Just a project I worked on that I remembered we did
Okay,
that.
so the material makes the door and the panels next to the door look as though there are windows. Window-like,
Correct.
which is difficult to pick up on a,
Yeah, no, I
Hold on.
just want to get some clarity on what it
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
that's all.
okay. Other questions? Thank you all. Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you for being here and clarifying. Okay, council members, is there a motion?
Move to approve the adoption of a revised site plan and building elevations for the property located at 13102 North 56th Street.
Second. Motion and second. Discussion of the motion?
Comment.
Comment?
I'm going to vote to approve this, although I'm really not happy with the way this transpired for since, for the last 6 or 8 months. As I've stated numerous times before, that, when we approve something, we're going on somewhat good faith as to the petitioner, and we're not trying to be difficult, but we have a concept in mind, and it came out way different than what we originally what I expected to be there. And thank you to the petitioner for doing the extra steps to at least come close. But I'll leave it at that.
Other comments?
Same.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No nays. Resolution is adopted. The site plan revision has been approved. Thank you. Next is the first public hearing and first reading of an ordinance approving a rezoning of folio number 037-534-0000, with an address of 10024 Davis Road, an unknown address, folio number 037531-5000. I will open the public hearing and ask anyone who intends to speak on this matter to please stand and be sworn in by the city clerk. Thank you, Madam Clerk. City Attorney, would you please poll the council for ex parte communications?
At this point, if each member of the City Council, if you would please state whether you have had any ex parte communications concerning this matter, either written or oral. If they were in writing, then you will need to provide a copy of that written communication to the city clerk. Either way, please state whether you've had that communication, with whom you had it, what the sum and substance of it was, and when did that take place. And I will begin with Councilmember Fernandez.
I have none.
Yes, I've got an email forwarded from the city clerk's office yesterday. It was forwarded this morning, but it was sent yesterday from a Carl Johnson. So the city clerk has a copy of that email, and it was in opposition to the project.
Is that, I was going to report on that also, we all got it. That's in the record though, isn't it?
But you need to state that you've received
Well, I
that.
did receive it, the same email that was mentioned by Councilmember Chambers.
Okay. So Councilmember Fernandez received it, but did not look at that yet, so.
I did.
I likewise received the same emails forwarded from the city clerk's office from Mr. Johnson, I think it is. That's all I got.
Same here. I received it also.
And if the clerk has that communication, it needs to be provided to the applicant as well.
Okay. Okay, Community Development Director Mike Sherman is going to explain. Where did?
Actually, it's me.
Oh, I'm sorry. It does have the wrong name, so welcome, Miranda.
Thank you. Miranda Naya, City Planner. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This is the first reading and first public hearing of RZP 2302. Wait for my slides. This is an aerial view of the subject property, which consisted 2 parcels. At the March 19, 2024 hearing, the southern parcel was annexed into the city and a comprehensive plan amendment was approved from a Hillsborough County designation to the Temple Terrace R9 Future Land Use District. The property is located within the utility service area and will be connected to central utilities. The subject property is approximately 6.7 acres. The northern parcel is approximately 2.4 acres and has a zoning of R7 Temple Terrace. And the southern parcel is approximately 4.18 acres and has a zoning of agricultural single-family conventional ACS 1 Hillsborough County. The applicant is requesting to change the zoning of the subject property to PD, Planned Development, for 28 single-family detached homes. These photos are looking north, south, and east on Davis Road from the subject property and looking west at the subject property from Davis Road. This is a snapshot of the zoning categories and properties in the surrounding area that are located in Temple Terrace. Properties that are in white have a Hillsborough County zoning district. To the north and west of the subject property is Temple Terrace R7, and to the south in blue purplish is PD. So changing the zoning to PD for the subject property would be compatible with the surrounding area. Here is a survey of the property submitted by the applicant. The existing structures will be removed if this project is approved. As a brief reminder, the previous master plan that was presented at the March 5th hearing contained 32 single-family lots. The deviations requested were lot size and width. The plan had proposed width lot size of 4,400 square feet and a lot width of 40 feet. The application was continued, and the applicant has proposed a new master plan to address some of those concerns from that hearing. Here is the new master plan submitted June 6, 2024. The new master plan proposes 28 lots, 26 of them being at least 50 foot wide. The general proposed lot size is 5,500 square feet, 50 by 110. The plan also includes the removal of the park, adding parking spaces around the mail kiosk, and relocation of the lift station. The submittal also includes an updated letter from the traffic engineer, new elevations and floor plans, and new bulk standards. Here are the proposed PD standards versus the R7 district. The PD standards state that PD has to be based off of the closest zoning district, which is R7. However, the purpose of a PD is flexibility, and modifications can be granted that serve the best interests of the PD. Standard single-family lots less than 70 feet have to be proposed through the PD process. The applicant, as I mentioned, is proposing deviations from lot area and width. The applicant is also requesting a deviation from the front yard setbacks, maximum building coverage, and maximum lot coverage. Staff is in general support of the project, but has an objection to the maximum lot coverage. The applicant is proposing the PD at 60% with the caveat that pools do not count towards lot coverage. The applicant wants the ability for homeowners to have a pool. The applicant assumes 60% of the lot, including things like the house, the driveway, AC pad, sidewalks. The applicant stated they feel that the project will meet the lot coverage proposed. Staff can support up to a maximum lot coverage of 60% for a single family lot in its entirety. Over 60% for single family detached is not at all supported by staff. All single family detached zoning districts in the city have a maximum lot coverage of 47.5%. That includes R10, R9, R7, and R7.5. The Land Development Code states accessory structures, including pools and decks, shall not exceed the total lot coverage of 47.5%. The highest lot coverage in multifamily zoning districts in the city is 60%. Also, the applicant appears to be proposing the building envelope as the proposed building coverage. And based on the elevations and floor plans, the building footprint appears to be smaller than the building coverage request. If there wasn't a deviation request, then I would say a building envelope would be appropriate and wouldn't matter as much. The applicant also submitted two elevation models, and the proposed master plan is based off of the larger model. Here's a view of one of the models. This is the smaller model. It is proposed at 2,400 square feet of living area, which means the bottom floor and the first floor and the second floor, and that's elevation A. And here's a slide of elevation B. It's similar to elevation A, but there are slight changes in facade materials. This slide here shows elevations with an optional larger front porch. Here's elevations with an optional lanai. And here's the first floor plans for elevation A. And optional second level floor plans. And then moving on to the larger model, which is at 2,900 square feet, and that is for living area. So this is for elevation A and B. Again, same as the smaller model, it has slight changes in facade materials. And these are optional lanais. They have the section detail on the left is for like a smaller lanai, and the right is for a larger option. And these are floor plans for that larger model on the first floor, and some options for the first floor and second level floor plan. Okay, staff has proposed 11 conditions if this application is approved. Those were in the staff report. I did have to add one condition since the staff report was written, and that was with discussions with the city engineer. The city engineer has a concern, let me get to the master plan, has a concern that the new master plan has lots 1 and 2 adjacent to the right-of-way. And so his concern is if the county wants dedication of the right-of-way, it's going to abut lots 1 and 2, and they'll have to be reconfigured. So the new condition reads as, if right-of-way dedication occurs, Lot 1 and Lot 2 may be reconfigured, but must have a width of 50 feet at the property line and follow the remainder of the bulk standards as outlined in Condition 2. That way, the city is protected, and we still would meet, the project would still meet Condition number 2, but it also allows the applicant flexibility in not having to come back for those 2 lots if there is right-of-way dedication. Okay. Staff also conditioned condition number 2 to the 60% limit, which eliminates the pools not counting towards lot coverage. Staff proposed these conditions, but City Council can modify the conditions, add a condition, or eliminate a condition. Community Development does request, if you do consider more than the 60% lot coverage, that there be a limit for the building permit processing, because reviewers at the building permit process will need a limit, or it can create trouble not having one established. That's it. Recommendations. So the Planning Commission recommended approval of the zoning reclassification and finds that it's consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. Again, staff is in general support of this project, but we have a objection to the lot coverage exceeding 60%. Other departments in the DRC had no objections, and staff recommends City Council approve this first reading, first public hearing with the proposed conditions as outlined.
Thank you, Maureen. I've got 100 questions, but we're not there yet. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this? Good evening, sir. We just need you to state your name and city of residence, please.
Jeff Hauser, City of Temple Terrace. We were here in the first reading back in May when they were trying the other development. We do appreciate the strides that have been made to come up with some of the suggestions that we had talked about earlier. We were definitely not in favor of the 40-foot lots. We are to the property of the north, which is zoned R7, which has 70-foot lots in our neighborhood. That is something that we were trying to keep and like to see with the development with the rest of our road. We already have talked about Davis Road being already not taken care of and very poorly in need of some repair, and just we keep adding more and more traffic and packing more and more houses on this road, which has always been an issue for us. So we had talked about it and agreed that we would like to try to keep the zoning at R7, but we do feel like this proposal is definitely heading in the right direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Other members of the public? Good evening, sir. We just need your name and city of residence, please.
Good evening. My name is Carl Johnson. I'm also in the neighborhood of Jeff Hauser on Davis Road. I'll be very brief, and I agree with Jeff. I think there have been strides getting to the development to where we think it fits into the overall, not just the overall neighborhood, but the overall idea that Temple Terrace wants to start moving in a direction where developers want to build here, where we have the demographics to support the trendy, walkable neighborhoods that we want. If you look at right now, a lot of the trends, a lot of the green spaces and parks all residing to the north of us in the River Hills area, that new development that they were talking about over by Riverside Park, like River Hills Park. You know what I mean? If you look at where we are in Davis Road, the only thing we had was the driving range. I know that is gone. So our green spaces in that area is actually diminishing and not really increasing. So to be brief, or just to encapsulate what I said, or just to say everything quickly, is yes, I think that the new proposal is going in the right direction. So we're happy about that. We want to kind of gravitate upwards and not necessarily have all of the, if you look at Davis Road, there's a lot of minority housing, a lot of duplexes along Davis Road, and that's all you see. Plus there is the just built Amazon. They just built the large new VA hospital, which is welcome. And then there is also the trailer park just at the end of Davis Road. So right now we have a lot of what we call low-income housing. And we have nothing against low-income housing, but we would like to build rather than just housing, but communities which support a greater good and can have more of that happening rather than just building communities just to house people, and then you get the negative impact of that happening. Crime rates increase and other social impacts that are not necessarily best for the city of Temple Terrace and the neighborhood that we live in. We really strive to make our neighborhood very welcoming. We strive to keep it going in a direction that people want to come to Temple Terrace. As I said in the letter I wrote, our location is great, but all developers say we don't have the demographics to support some of the things we would like. And we're hoping that this community that he's planning to build will help support the overall vision of Temple Terrace. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Other members of the public? Okay. Good evening, sir.
Evening. I am Harry Todd, a longtime resident of Temple Terrace, and I have a few questions about the buildings. Are they going to have concrete driveways, asphalt, or pavers? Anybody give me that answer?
Well, this is not question and answer. You can make comments and we'll ask, if we feel appropriate, we might ask the staff.
Well, anyway, I was curious about the drainage because they had pavers on the driveways that allowed the water to go through naturally rather than everything having to go to a retention pond. It would make it a lot easier for us to swallow because we'd have less concerns about it. Also, the setbacks, I'm not sure without the plan looking at it, what are the setbacks on the streets and side yards? That's just a couple of questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Other public comment? Good evening.
Misaila Rosari, also neighbors of Carl and Jeff. I do appreciate some of the changes that they're proposing. The biggest concern that I have, and I expressed it, is like he said, is just the you're adding one more traffic, and it's great that you're building a nicer community base versus what you see there, but I know the road and just the infrastructure, this does nothing for the infrastructure out there. And I don't think the city can or maybe has a lot of interest in improving that. It's not a very walkable area. It's a safety hazard for people. I try to run that neighborhood. I no longer do that because it's just not safe for you to do that. Now you're adding more, you're going to have potentially, maybe they're saying maybe so low-income housing, you're going to have kids coming in there in an area that's not walkable. And it's not pedestrian friendly at all because you're going to increase the traffic. And that's the biggest concern is it's good to develop the area, but it's not doing anything for the infrastructure. There's drainage issues right outside that same area. It floods right outside where that entrance is being proposed. And some of these projects, the added traffic is not doing anything for the infrastructure. And I don't think Hillsborough County cares about it. I wish Temple Terrace would annex the road instead of these lots. You know, that would help the community more than adding more development. That's just, my concern is the infrastructure out there. It's falling apart and nobody cares. So I hope you guys do.
Other public comment? Okay, is the applicant here? Floor is yours, sir.
Michael Shue, State Street Investments, Tampa, Florida.
This is your time to, if you'd like to make a presentation or respond to the public comment or whatever you'd like to state.
In March, we were here, we met with the council, and we listened to the neighbors in the community and thought that what we proposed was in line with what was being requested at that time. It took us obviously a couple months to put everything together, but we feel confident that this is going to give the answers a little bit more of fulfillment on what they were looking for. So that was the intention.
Good, thank you.
Hey, good evening, council. Jeremy Couch with Tampa Civil. I reside in Land O'Lakes, but have offices in St. Pete and Lutz. Happy to be here. Staff report was very thorough. Fantastic job. Miranda, thank you. In speaking with the staff, let me answer a few of the audience questions really quick. So the proposed setbacks for the structures are 20-foot front, 5-foot side, 20-foot rear, minimum lot width of 50 foot, minimum area of 500 square feet, which makes it a 110-foot lot. When you remove the front and rear setbacks, it's a 70-foot deep home maximum. The driveways would generally be concrete. However, depending on the builder and the city's allowance of pavers, that would certainly be something we'd be interested in. The community will have sidewalks internal and along Davis Road. As you guys know, Davis Road is owned and maintained by Hillsborough County. Our traffic engineer, Michael Yates, is here. We have met with the county engineer. We have discussed the access. The driveway is aligned with the adjacent roadway across the street, which is why we have the swing when you come in. The county did not request any additional right-of-way, but certainly if we needed to give right-of-way to make the sidewalk work, we're good with the condition that Miranda has proposed. Speaking of the lot coverage, so when we did the River Park subdivision, in the PD, we had a lot coverage of 75%. And the purpose of that is so that if some of those homeowners wanted to construct pools in their backyards, they had the ability. It would not need to rezone their lot to build a pool or ask for a variance. I don't see an Elmo, but if I could approach the dais, I have a few handouts just to kind of show you what this would look like and what the percentages would be.
Sure.
Thank you.
So when you look at this document, this illustrates the smallest lot proposed within the community and the maximum potential for any single homeowner to enjoy their lot. The maximum coverage, meeting all accessory setbacks, lot coverage, two-car driveway, full pad building from setback to setback, reaches 69%. We would ask the council to consider 69% instead of 60% strictly so that these homeowners have the flexibility to build pools. As far as runoff goes, there will be adequate retention. We would consider that in the design. We're impaired, so we have additional retention requirements above the regular retention requirements. And that's pretty much it. Here for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. Okay, council members, where do we start to eat this elephant? So we'll start down here. Vice Mayor Abel.
I'll start with the idea that originally this was proposed to be affordable housing, and with 2,400 and 29,000 square foot, 100 square foot footprints, and potential for pools. I'm getting the impression that that is no longer the case. Just wanted to confirm that. Okay.
That is correct. When the 40-foot lots, when we listened to the community objected against the 40-foot lots in the affordable housing, so we had to start from scratch.
So follow-up question, what do you expect to be the starting price for some of these homes?
That's hard to say. It's going to be similar to the community to the north, so the Navajo Street community. So there's houses that are 400,000 and there's houses up to 650,000.
Okay.
So it would be a swing of probably, low fours or high threes to probably in the mid sixes.
Okay, thank you. I have more questions, but on a different topic. Should I go on or?
Sure.
Okay. So there were several mentions about drainage concerns by the public, and I was wondering, are there existing drainage issues in this neighborhood? I'm not sure if you're the one to answer or if, yes, sir.
Jeremy Couch, Councilwoman. No, ma'am. The subdivision to the north was developed with retention ponds, so when you see drainage concerns, a lot of these old subdivisions that do not have proper drainage facilities, they don't have designated retention ponds. There are no drainage issues. A very, very small portion of the northwest corner of this property is Zone AE. We will not be impacting that flood area.
Okay, thank you. That's all for now.
Okay.
Councilmember Schuster.
I have several questions. You answered the one about the anticipated selling price. What the general flavor for the houses in that area, what that's going to be like. Talking about stormwater capacity, a little bit, we can get a little more detail on that. Will there be a retention area?
Yes.
All right, and where's that going to be located?
It's on the low side of the site in the northwest corner.
Okay, all right. That's good. So that'll be taken care of. You see, my other question was about the road, the internal road, not Davis Road, the internal road. We haven't decided whether that's going to be private or public. When will you guys make that decision? And if it's private, who's going to be responsible for maintaining it? A homeowners association, or will it be a compulsory homeowners association or voluntary?
The Swift Mud requires all subdivisions to have a mandatory homeowners association.
Okay. Because
the homeowners association needs to maintain the retention ponds and other common area infrastructure. If we gate the community, if we can make a gate work, then it would certainly be private streets. Otherwise, we've laid this out with your standard right-of-way section and your standard roadway section. And so we would talk with the city engineer about possibly dedicating these streets to the city.
Okay. All right. Let's see, I did have one. I had a question for Troy, but he's not here. But anyway, Miranda, could you readdress or reiterate the coverage concern, the coverage statistics? I'm a little fuzzy on where we stand right now.
Some of my points were that all of our single-family detached zoning districts have a maximum of 47.5%. I do recognize that the PD does allow for flexibility. It's just when you get into 60%, that aligns with our multifamily districts in the city. And then once you get above 70%, you're looking at commercial. So that was that's most of the concern.
So you're recommending 60%?
In its entirety, yeah.
And that includes pools, decks, everything.
So the larger model, probably, if they're at their max, they said 60% without pools being counted. So I'm assuming that wouldn't include the pool. So those probably won't have a pool, but if they go with the smaller model, they might be able to have a pool, but they didn't provide those.
Mr. Couch is saying 69% at this point.
Yeah.
So we have
Staff can't
an
support
issue.
anything over 60. So.
Pardon me?
Staff will not support anything over 60.
Okay, but we have the ability
Yes,
to
you
mandate
can-
60 as a max.
Yes, I have that as proposed condition number 2. If you go to,
Okay, no, I realize that, and I'm glad. It was a good presentation, but you got a plate of spaghetti here. You did really well with it.
Thank you.
So, in explaining everything. So you're still holding with 60?
still holding with 60, but if council wants, we can amend condition number 2 for 69.
Okay. I think that's it. I think that's it.
Councilmember Chambers?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, what happened to the park? I know it's probably because you want to put a house on there, but you had a park in the nice one, and now we don't.
We, Councilman, we do have a open space in the front of the property. I'd say if I were to Kentucky windage it, that's about 6,000 square foot of area.
Okay.
I don't know that I'd call it a park on 6 acres, but certainly it could be activated with something for the residents. Originally we had an open space area here in the back. Between the two projects, the roadway didn't really change, but the yield did. And so that's really kind of where this came from.
Okay. Next question, your homeowners association that you talk about, would they be responsible for all the maintenance of the yards of the homes, or would that be the individual?
Individuals.
Okay, so the individual would be,
Architectural control, common area maintenance, collecting dues, making sure people don't paint their houses pink. That'll be the service that the HOA provides.
okay. And would fencing be allowed between the homes?
Yes.
Okay, so they could.
Subject to the city.
Subject to the regular rules of fencing, okay. So same for the backyard too, all right? Okay, and the last question, in your presentation, it was mentioned the development with the 70% lot coverage. I wasn't familiar with that, maybe I called it a different name. What development is that?
So it's, that's a great question because I had a hour-long conversation with Miranda about it. Other outside of Temple Terrace, lot coverage refers to the building coverage, and then they have an impervious surface coverage maximum. They have it in 2 separate categories. I believe that the Temple Terrace Land Development Code references it as lot coverage, and that's everything: sheds, driveways, houses, pools. So when you look at the code that says 47.5%, you subtract the driveway, you subtract the shed, you're ending up with a double wide. And so that's why in all of our zonings, we ask for larger lot coverage so that the individuals, when they build out their home and decide with the builder if they want to put in a pool or something, it's not a lot of grief for the developer, the builder, to come in and pull that pool permit and not be in violation of the zoning code.
Okay, I have a question for either Miranda or Mike. Do we have any developments or any parts of our city that allow coverage up to 70%?
I believe Jeremy is referring to the D.R. Horton project that was approved back in 2020 or 2021. He references a plan that says 75% lot coverage, but I can't find it in any of the ordinances. Staff has been looking for it. We can't confirm that's what was approved. We can see the setbacks that were approved, the lot size, but we can't find documentation, at least in the ordinance, that provides that one in particular. PDs are generally known to deviate from some of the standards. I just don't know any one in particular other than that one.
Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Councilmember Fernandez.
So my primary question has to do with the maintenance of the retention pond and how, so the homeowners association will be mandatory for the homeowners. So there's no question you'll be part of a homeowners association.
You cannot get a ERP for a single-family subdivision in the state of Florida without agreeing to establish a homeowners association. So the Water Management District for so long would permit these retention ponds for communities and then have no maintenance entity. And then they clog up. So now we establish, the Water Management District has very specific guidelines and language that we have to include in our draft HOA docs. We give that to them, and then prior to final sign-off from the Water Management District, we have to demonstrate that the association has been formed, the documents have been recorded, and that the common area tracts have been transferred in fee to the association from operation and maintenance.
So will the retention ponds be actively filled with water? Is that the expectation?
No, these will be dry ponds.
Okay, so they will only be filled at a time when the water is such that it exceeds the drainage capacity. Okay, will there be storm drains on the street, or does everything drain? Okay.
Yep. Yep. The best example I can give you is probably the River Park subdivision that we developed with the Florida College in D.R. Horton, I think 2 years ago. We finished. Same right-of-way section. Temple Terrace is really high and dry, so we have the luxury of dry retention ponds. I know that's not attractive, but it's much better than wet ponds. So it'll be very similar.
Okay, so then the homeowners association will be responsible for that, and the only other common area space would be the open space at the entrance?
Yes.
And the rest would be private ownership responsible for their own maintenance?
Yes.
Okay. The road, however, if that remains a private road, that would be part of the homeowners association?
Yes.
Okay. And the sidewalks as well?
Yes.
Okay. And that's it.
Can I follow up?
Oh.
Just a quick follow-up?
Sure.
Okay. What kind of segregations are going to be on the north side separating from Navajo Avenue, if anything?
Typically, we'll usually put in a solid fence, but single family on single family is
kind of sort of what they
the same use.
Kind of sort of what's at D.R. Horton on the River Park and the
78th Street, between 78th.
The preserve, yes, thank you. And then one final question. Can we add a condition to this? Okay. All right, okay, thank you.
I have some questions, Miranda.
I just wanted to echo the applicant's statement about the right-of-way dedication. That'll be done at the next stage. If this application is approved, it'll move to final site plan where they go through the preliminary plat and the infrastructure and final plat stage. You will see that at the final site plan, and that's where dedications occur. So you'll know whether it's public or private at that time for at least the road and all the other improvements. The city engineer did make a comment in discussions with him that the few parking spaces that are shown in the master plan, he would like that to be private, but other than that, he's not leaning one way or another for the internal road to be public or private in speaking with him. But he said, obviously, if there is a gate, then it would be a private road.
Okay, so can you put the slide back up that shows the overall? I have a few questions. I'm going to start with what I hope is the simplest one. so we don't get too tangled up on the complicated one.
There's a lot of slides in this one.
Okay, here we go. So, Miranda, help us understand, or maybe help me understand about the right-of-way dedication. You're asking for what? Explain on this map exactly what you're asking for.
Is that the new condition I added
Yes.
with the city engineer? Okay, so at the very edge near Davis Road, I believe that, let me look at my, it's too small in there, but I believe it's lot 1 and 2.
Those are the ones in the southeast corner.
Southeast corner, yeah, abutting Davis Road. If the county asks for right-of-way dedication to put in sidewalks along Davis Road, they're going to need room. And because lot 1 and 2 already abut Davis Road, those would have to be reconfigured.
So what, but it wouldn't just be those 2 lots, it would be the whole thing. I mean, why would you just do those 2 lots? Wouldn't you need right-of-way dedication for the rest of it too, all the way from the top to the bottom?
Well, there's no lots there. The lift station, depending on the width that Hillsborough County wants, the lift station might have to be moved. It looks like they have a little bit of space between the lift station and Davis Road, but lot 1 and 2 directly abut it.
So does the black line on this proposed map, does it align with the current county right-of-way all the way up and down Davis Road, or is this closer to the road than everything else?
Can you state that again? I'm not.
So Davis Road goes all the way from Morris Bridge to Temple Terrace Highway. I'm assuming that the right-of-way line on the west side of Davis Road is, I don't know, maybe I'm assuming wrong. It would seem like it's a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
No?
I could probably speak to that.
Okay.
So it's going to jog in and out along the corridor on both sides, depending on, when people have dedicated right of way, if it's been requested. But I want to kind of give you a graphic. So if there was a dedication, it could look something like that. If you can see my blue line here, just a parallel dedication. So with lots 1 and 2 being much larger than 5,500 square feet, they would be fine. They would just get.
So how many additional feet are we talking about?
Sometimes they ask for 10, 15, 20. It just depends on the improvements they want to make along the right-of-way, if they're going to put drainage or anything there for the sidewalk. And then we'll put sidewalk walkway.
Okay, so that's not a big issue then. Okay, then I'll move on. So help me, Miranda,
Those lots on lot 1 and 2 are big enough where it shouldn't.
yeah, I see they're the deepest ones, so, okay, I'll leave that alone. So let me ask the part that I can't quite, I can't seem to get my head wrapped around this. So I understand when we rezone to PD, that PD's like the zoning district that we go to for projects, because then we can kind of not do what we want, but that's the category that gives us the most flexibility to have projects that, don't quite fit in other things. So that's why we have PD. When we go to PD, I also understand that you're required to try to find the closest matching zoning category to whatever it is that we're contemplating doing and compare it to that, like R7 or whatever. But we know already that it's not going to comply with R7 or we wouldn't be going to PD. So we already know that's the reason we're going to PD, is because we know it's not going to comply with whatever category we're using as a benchmark. Where I'm going with this is I'm trying to understand the city's interest in the lot coverage. And I can't quite understand how that benefits the city. And here's what I'm saying is that the lots are smaller than R7. We know that. That's why we're going to PD. We've asked them to increase from 40 feet to 50 feet, which they've done. They're putting nice homes on these lots, right? Whether that's good or bad, that's your perspective, but they're putting nice homes on the lots, which are more compatible with the neighbors and the area. But they're not huge lots. They wouldn't comply with R7. It would seem like these homes being of high value would be a benefit to us as a city too. And that the ability to put a pool and a pool cage around it or to put that behind the home would only increase the value of that home, which would also be a benefit to us. So I'm having trouble understanding what's the drawback and what's the secret behind 60% being a bright line? What is the 60% bright line? I mean, we already know that we're working around these rules, which is why we're going to PD to begin with. If we were just going to make them go with standard stuff, we'd be going R7. So what's the significance of the bright line at 60% instead of 69% that would allow a pool, which would make the homes more desirable in the marketplace and make the homes worth more money in perpetuity for resale and everything else? The taxable value would be higher. The homeowners would be the people who would be able to afford the higher homes would, I don't know, this is kind of a broad statement, but would presumably they would be more compatible with the area. I can't quite get my head around what's significant about the 60% instead of 69s. Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, so I'll back up to the PD.
Okay.
PD, you're right. It allows flexibility. It's really intended for projects that don't perfectly fit in your zoning categories. PDs are negotiations. It's supposed to be a give and take, not just give, give, give. And so they provide the most flexibility, and per the Land Development Code, right, you are supposed to base it off of the closest zoning district. A few things, I understand that it's a PD, and that's why that's why you don't see me having an objection to the 60%. I didn't have an objection to that because I knew that the smaller lot sizes would be probably greater than the 47%. However, going over rough numbers with the applicant, Model 1 does meet the 47.5%. That was without the pool. That was with just the building footprint. So I do want to state that the smaller model did meet the 47.5% with the building footprint. But yes, I do understand that because, right, if you have a R10 100-foot road frontage, then you'll meet that. And should every zoning district have the same, if you have a smaller lot size and lot width, that's what PDs are for, is for that flexibility. But all of our zoning districts for single-family detached, all of them, all the subdivisions that you see in the city, unless they're PD, they're at 47.5%. So, and the reason that the 60% is, at least for community development's limit, is that's when you get into the multifamily. So there's, yes, it is flexibility, but as far as a planning standpoint, there are limits. You have certain areas that you can expand to in a single family that would align with other single family homes. And then as you get increased lot coverage, which is slightly different from ISR, they're used almost interchangeably, but it covers everything on the lot. Then you get into higher categories where it's multifamily. And then of course, the higher you get into the commercial and the industrial. So it's just a limit. We based our limit off what's in the Land Development Code. So I don't know if that directly answers your question, but
it hits around it, but I'm still left with I'm puzzled. So I can understand why we wouldn't want 0 lot line subdivisions. We want people to we want some green, we want some grass, we want some landscaping, we want our city to look beautiful. Mm-hmm. I understand that, but as I understand the stormwater, because I'm thinking, well, maybe it's a stormwater thing, but I think the stormwater is being run down the street into the pond anyway.
Okay,
So
I can touch on that. I think maybe that's where it's going. So impervious surface ratio versus lot coverage. Impervious surface ratio is ISR that's typically used by engineers. You will have it in some of our land development code, but that is right concerning drainage and the engineering calculations with that. Lot coverage is more, it's used more in planning for aesthetics. How should I say that? The look of your limit of your building coverage and things like that. It's more of an aesthetic component to it. Yeah.
okay, I'm still, I'm not going to beat the horse to death, but or I think it's probably too late for that. But I'm still not quite getting the government's interest in this. It just seems to me like whether I'm trying to walk a circle around this. If I'm the neighbors, if I'm the tax collector, if I'm a resident, if I'm the developer, from whatever hat I put on, I don't see a downside to the increased lot coverage that allows people to put a pool in these homes. To me, it raises the property value. It increases the saleability of the house forever, which generates higher tax revenue for us, as greedy as we are. I don't know what I'm missing, and I don't want to advocate to go against your recommendations because I have a tremendous amount of, you guys do this weird chicken bone thing that I don't understand, but I'm missing something. Mike, is there something? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, a couple things. So the applicant has done a great job making improvements to the application, but they could have proposed a plan that did meet, the 47.5%. So it could have, but right, with the flexibility, they are requesting 60% plus. And I will state, it's my job as the planning city planner to go by the land development code. So when we have established rules in the land development code, that's my job to follow them. So if I see a 60% limit for multifamily, I can't propose a recommendation for over 60%.
I got you. I do think, and then I'm done, but I do think that the D.R. Horton subdivision, I don't remember us having the conversation about the lot. Maybe we had it in a lot coverage, but I do know that those are that we did talk about setbacks, bigger houses on smaller lots. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what the outcome was, but I bet you that, I don't know what the number is, but I know those are bigger homes on smaller lots because we talked a lot about that at the time. I remember that discussion because there was a lot of pushback, a lot of discussion in the community about that, a lot of, and a lot of people say, oh, there's no yards or tiny little yards, which is really what a lot of people want nowadays. They don't want to mow the grass.
I think they might be over building coverage some, but I don't know about the lot coverage. But looking from aerials, right, I have seen it, and it does look like
okay,
it's the same lot.
All right, I'm done.
But we'll go with whatever city council wants to approve. But from a land development planning perspective, I have to follow the land development code.
I'm fine. I'm just very cautious about not taking staff's recommendations, which is why I've been trying to run this to ground, because, I mean, my gut tells me that I'd like to approve the 69% or 60, whatever, so they can build pools. But I'm always very reluctant to not accept your recommendation. It kind of scares me.
Yeah, I know you were talking about the other neighbors. Well, most likely your other neighbor has 47.5% unless they're in a PD. So it's comparative.
I have one more.
Okay. Thank you, Maureen. Yes. No, I'm done. Everybody's tired of me.
Okay, not tired of you, but I'm just tired. Sorry, a question on that. So if we approve a condition of 60 or 69, let's just say we approve the 69, will there be a something in there that says that only has to be for a pool? Or can they all of a sudden say we want to build a house to that?
Good point.
Proposed conditions. So they'll be able to have, in proposed condition number 2, 60% of lot covered, so that would cover everything technically. But they're saying they don't think they have enough space for a pool. So it's whatever would meet that limit. Yeah, it's not limited to pools unless you want to put it a condition that would limit that.
Good point. Thank you.
Yes, and say up to 69% for a pool to make it specific.
Yeah, we can also amend the chart to say up to 69% for pools.
But you
exclusively
leave it at
or
6,
something.
leave it at 60,
Yeah.
but allow the increase to 69 for the purposes of constructing a pool.
We can write a condition for that.
Also, we're not the only, just so everybody's clear, we're not the only ones who have this. The 60% is a common percentage used by other cities in Florida. Some of them have a little more, some of them have a little less. But also when you're putting in a pool, you have to think on top, once someone decides to put it in the pool, then they want to put in the walkway around it. And so now you don't just have a pool that can collect water, you've got concrete around it that now the water's going to run off. It's not going to sink into the ground. So you have to consider and then you need the equipment for the pool, so you have to think of where the pool is going to lead and not just think of it as a hole in the ground that's going to collect that water. So, but again, we are not the only ones that have that 60% requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Sean. Councilmember?
All right, thank you. One more question on the same topic from that. So if we go to 60 or 69 or whatever it is above what the concept plan we've seen, at what point does SwiftMud or some agency have to say the retention pond has to be bigger because of the loss of percolation coverage?
Jeremy Couch. So essentially, sir, when we design the retention pond, we account for all of this impervious. So whatever our maximum build-out impervious is, we calculate the retention pond based on that.
Follow up. So if because you don't know if the people buying the home is going to put a pool in now or 10 years from now.
Maximum.
So you would design to the 69%.
Absolutely. We design for the maximum build-out wherever we do business, because we know people do what people do, and they don't always follow the rules, and we don't want to be living on the very edge that, gosh forbid, somebody puts in a shed or a pool and now the system doesn't work. So we design for the worst case storm and the largest coverage possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Couch. We had a picture, a rendering up there with a couple of different pools on there. So I don't know if you can answer this on the fly. Is it possible to ratchet down from the 69% number to a smaller number which would allow for a smaller pool? Is that practical or?
I mean, so where this came from was, you guys have primary structural setbacks that we're going to establish in the PD. And then in addition, the code has accessory structure setbacks. Pools are considered an accessory structure. You allow accessory structures to be within 5 feet of the rear property line, 5 foot of the side property lines, if this is approved. So what I did was I had our folks calculate complete coverage, maximum worst case scenario. We might have 1 or 2 people build a pool. We might have everybody build a pool. I don't know. But that's what this is. It shows all the way to the limit, and the maximum it would be is 69. So I gave you a real number based on, the real engineering of what it could possibly be. It is nothing arbitrary. It's completely calculated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, council members, other questions?
Just have
Yes.
one. Is there an this, you may have already answered it, is there an engineering requirement for the impervious surface In other words, 60, you indicated they were sometimes synonymous going forward, although one is an aesthetic and the impervious deals with water runoff and so forth. Is there a standard that we have to follow, or is that handled by the size of the retention pond?
Yeah, the ISR is what the engineer would be concerned with, because that deals directly with the drainage, but they're not, in the code, it references both, so he's going to build out to whatever limit we set.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the concern was that if they exceed, they might already be below the 60%, because again, he did it based off a building envelope and not the building footprint. So their proposal might actually be at something less, like 55.
I had asked about a condition, an additional condition to be set forth. Could we get that common area, or that one area up in the north part, a park, of some description? Can we make that a condition, or is that something that I don't want to turn anything off on this project, because I like the progress that has been made on it. But the green space, if it was some kind of a park, that would be, and this is not the proper time to do that, that's fine if it is.
Are you talking about, they didn't designate a new park area, but
Correct.
Are you talking about if they want a park? Or?
We could make that a park, make that common area a park. If that's not an appropriate condition, then so be it. If it's,
Yeah, I would just propose a setback. I'd have to look to see what our, usually if you have a park, you would have a setback for the subdivision. I just don't.
Okay.
We can set a setback at like 20 feet, whatever distance we want. It's a PD, so we can set a setback, and then anything further than that setback, they can have a park. That would be my only concern, is you don't want the park right at the right-of-way, especially if there's going to be a right-of-way dedication. But yeah, we can certainly put in some type of condition for a park
or at least
area.
discuss it with the petitioner.
Yep.
So you're next, but, well, before we leave this though, there's a site plan, because we're doing the rezoning tonight, right? There's still site plan review coming.
The final site plan for subdivisions would basically be a plat. The final site plan would incorporate the preliminary plat, which is basically what you're looking at now, and then the infrastructure portion of it.
Right, so we don't necessarily have to make that a condition of approval for the rezoning. We could express a desire for the developer to take a look at this and include it in the site plan review, correct?
That's my
We can further do that, yeah, if we want to leave it to that, just because it has to be tied to conditions anyway. So if we did, I'd prefer to put setbacks in a PD, but yes, that'll be fine at a later point. We can come back with the final site plan.
I just don't want to hold something that,
Yeah.
if we're at 99% tonight, I don't want to jam it up with.
I'm not trying to curdle that pot of milk there.
Vice Mayor?
So my concern with the 69% lot coverage has to do with collection of stormwater and its runoff from having that much coverage. And I was wondering if it might be appropriate to negotiate some kind of compromise about, someone mentioned pavers that are pervious for driveways earlier. And I don't know if that's something that might, allow the pools and not have that concern about that, about the 69%. I don't know, just spitballing.
I wish the city engineer was here. There is a section, it proposed is usually, right, asphalt, but there is a section that says that alternative design materials can be submitted and determined, but I'm not sure, that's kind of gray. I'll leave that up for the city engineer, but I can talk to him on that.
Yes, City Manager.
Not that I'm the expert on this, but I know in my former community, brick paver driveways were not considered pervious surface. It was actually considered impervious. So it may not address the issue that you're trying to resolve potentially.
No, not brick pavers, pervious pavers.
Pervious pavers. Okay. All right.
Okay, Councilmember Fernandez.
I just have a follow-up for the engineer regarding the stormwater collection. So it is going to be a dry pond, but and you said that you're designing for maximum capacity. What is the expected collection method?
So, that's a good question. So essentially, there's going to be a Miami curb with, standard curb inlets, the square box with the opening that you see in the movie It, and from the back of the curb up to the back of the sidewalk, we generally design that at a 2% grade. And then from the back of the sidewalk to the furthest point in the rear of the yard, we design that as a 1% grade, which is we fall 1 foot per 100, or 2 foot per 100 and 2%. So essentially, when you design a subdivision, we calculate what that furthest drainage is, and then we establish our pad and our finished floor from that point. And then from there, our driveway down to the curb in the front. So these would be all what would be considered a type A lot, with the exception of a few of them on the north side that would back up to the pond. So these would all be what we consider type A's, which is fancy engineering term for drainage from the rear to the front. And these boogers here would be type B's, which is half goes to the street and half goes to the rear. And so there's a much more complex method on how we calculate drainage, but the simple method is called the rational. It's Q equals CIA. C is your coefficient of coverage. In this instance, we'd be at like 70%, 69%, whatever the aggregate is of the total community. And that's what we'd size the system for. We don't use that method. It's a little bit more, we use something a little more complicated, but that's what we would do.
So the expectation is the water would flow from the back of the lot on to the street and then into the storm drains to be taken to the retention pond.
To the retention pond. The retention pond's going to be dried because of the treatment method required. The pond will stage up, and then at some point it will pop off in a structure to the northwest, where it eventually makes its way to the Hillsborough River.
That's it.
Okay, are we ready to close the hearing? Very good.
Good questions. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. I'm going to close the public hearing and ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, owning 2 parcels of land located south of East Fowler Avenue and west of Davis Road, addressed as 10024 Davis Road and totaling 6.7 plus minus acres, lying within the unincorporated area of Hillsborough County, legally described in Exhibit A attached hereto by changing the zoning atlas map designation on said property from zoning classification agricultural single-family conventional ASC 1 in Hillsborough County to residential 7 R7 in Temple Terrace, to plan development PD in Temple Terrace for RZP 23-02, providing for amendment to the official zoning atlas map of the city, providing for severability, providing for correction of typographical errors, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So I'm going to vary from my notes here just slightly, Council, and have a little discussion prior to asking for a motion. As I see it, I don't know how you see it, as I see it, there's a few things we need to do here. First one is to decide whether we want to approve or deny this to begin with. That's the first question. The second one is that if we do want to approve it, there's the recommendations of Miranda that we saw. That is most significant of them are the dedication of the right-of-way, which the applicant doesn't seem to be objected to anyway, so that's not a big issue. The second issue is the total lot coverage of 60% versus 69%. So with that, I'd open it for discussion.
Well, that's my question, is what do we need to do if we find it acceptable to change to a 69% coverage, but with the language that was suggested to be specific that 69% was allowable for a pool and not for the full house?
That could be stated in a motion.
Okay.
That the motion could be made along the lines of we vote for approval on first reading with the changes to staff recommendation to allow up to 69%, assuming that the additional 9% is only for the purpose of a pool or its enclosure. It could be stated in a motion.
Okay.
If that's the council's desire. I don't know if it is.
I can live with it.
So I'm trying to get a little discussion going so somebody doesn't make a motion and then we vote it down or.
Beat it up. I'm comfortable with the additional language, modifying it to 69% strictly for pool purposes, not additional or ancillary structures.
What do you think?
I'm reluctant to support that. I will, but the difference I have between that and the D.R. Horton project, which we don't know, was we had no staff objection to that. And we do on this one. And I'm uncomfortable going against a staff recommendation. There are experts, and we're here to listen to expert testimony. However, I also heard other testimony, and reluctantly I will support that.
Vice Mayor?
I can get behind supporting going up to 69% if we can look into, there's a name for it, like permeable pavers for some part of the coverage. I feel like the stormwater runoff is a serious concern over there, and I would like to see that added.
So when you say, what I'm picturing, and maybe this is what it is or maybe there's something different, I'm picturing like Lettuce Lake Park.
Yeah.
The parking area at Lettuce Lake Park that's like concrete blocks with holes in them and there's grass growing up in the middle.
Those are kind of ugly, but
that's what I was thinking.
this can be Googled, and I did Google it while we were here, but there are permeable pavers that are designed to have a little wider gap in between them. It doesn't grow weeds, but it does allow water to seep through. And I don't know much about them, to be honest, but I do have some reservations about the lot coverage without some kind of allowance to, allow water to percolate.
Yes.
You know, in my experience over the years on all the different types of pavers that allow that, over time, all the pores clog, the maintenance of it's terrible, and it's better to design the project knowing what you have and design it. And Swift Mud and the other, our engineers won't allow it to be built. You know, my concern is we do that, they get some allowances for that, those pavers, and then over time they stop up and stuff. So that's just my concern with that. But I also am very concerned about drainage. And I think it has to be, it'll have to be drained and permitted to the size.
Well, what can we do to prevent the slippery slope of like more and more land coverage in that area? I know we have the possible condition of only allowing for a pool. I don't know. I'm just not sure if that's enough.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hearing some yay and some against, and I'd really like to get us to a point where we all can live with something, and if we're not all comfortable with it, I don't want to, just for the sake of agreement, I don't want to put an arbitrary thing out here. Recommendation is 60%. Still not a terrible project, I just think it's going to limit the project by not allowing for a pool. I am not as concerned about the runoff. First of all, part of the runoff would be captured by the pool. Yeah, there'd be some of it that would fall on the pool deck that obviously, but that would run off into the yard too. The pool decks are sloped. So I don't really see this as being as big of a, if we were allowing just another concrete slab or something, I would be less, but I have a pool, and I have a deck around the pool, and when it rains, the pool fills up.
Free water.
And the water doesn't sit on the pool deck, it runs into the grass around the pool deck. So I don't know that, if it were if we're talking about another slab or a basketball court in the backyard or something like that, I could see this being a little more, but I don't see this being the big problem for the impervious. I mean, I hear what you're saying, I'm not dismissive of it, but I'm thinking practically speaking, I don't see this, where do you think the water's gonna go? It's gonna go into the ground. I mean, it's gonna go off the pool deck into the grass and drain into the ground. It's not even gonna go into the storm drain.
Well, a lot of times when it comes to stormwater runoff, it's not necessarily like where it goes, it's the rate at which it goes and how much erosion results from that increased speed. So I don't know really so much how that relates or if it's going to have a negative impact by having that much surface coverage. But I mean, like Councilmember Chambers said, I mean, if our planner said our land development code says this and there's a reason for that, then I don't know. I'd like to understand the reason more, like what you were asking.
Maybe a point of clarification with that. The coverage is more aesthetic, okay, for the appearance. Whereas the water runoff or the impervious runoff, that's captured by the calculus of the size of the retention pond. Okay, so the storm drain system that's created would take care of that, short of any standards that anybody can speak to for the stormwater runoff. And there doesn't appear to be anything except that it modifies the size of the retention ponds, the depth, and whatever slopes are required on the property, to your point. So, I mean, I think that solves that problem. That was my question. You know, I had assumed that coverage and the impervious, whatever your acronym was, the impervious area was the same thing, were synonymous. And it's kind of close, but not really. Aesthetics, the 60% is like, yeah, that's okay, touchy-feely, whereas the other's a hard calculation that can be addressed with the size of the retention pond and so forth. So,
I'm not an expert in this area. I'm sorry, too, that the engineer, someone is not here, but in just looking this up quickly, because I understand that it would certainly help if there was an explanation as to why we have these limitations. I was just looking at an article from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and it says that when natural vegetation is replaced with an impervious surface, the natural hydrology cycle is altered, increasing stormwater runoff and reducing groundwater recharge. The result is more frequent flooding, higher flood peak flow, lower base flow in streams, and lower water table levels. And then it goes on to talk about how that when water lands on pavement, it becomes superheated. So now you have hotter water running off, and it says it's talking about streams, that when hotter water runs off into streams, then it makes them inhospitable for the life that was there. So it isn't just aesthetics, and it isn't just flooding. It changes other things. And there's no time for me to do any more research on that right now, but that's all I can offer you.
But in this case, with a dry retention pond, any runoff is going to sit in the retention pond and seep into the ground there, not run directly to the stream unless it's an excessive rain and it's going to meet the overflow capacity of that dry retention pond before it gets drained into any water. So, I mean, in that case, it's not direct runoff into the river.
Okay, so we've had some good discussion. It doesn't sound like it's landing where I wanted it to, but I can, okay, so to your point, we do have a staff recommendation for 60%. To your point, that seems to solve the questions of impermeable surfaces and water runoff and all that. So, do we want a motion that just accepts staff's recommendation and we just approve the project on first reading?
I'm not willing to make that yet. I told you that was my objection, but I also could support the 69% too.
I'm willing to make a motion that we approve on first reading at 69% with the language that 69%, that 60% is for the structure with the additional 9% being available to put a pool.
Is there a second?
I'll second it for purposes of discussion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and you are up.
Okay. Can we, Mr. Sean, can we approve this on first reading and get a follow-up report from our city engineer before the second reading so that we can verify that the assumptions that we're making are valid?
Sure, you can approve on first reading. Obviously, this is coming back for a second reading. Nothing is guaranteed between the first and the second, and if that's what your request is, then I'm sure that community development and I will make sure that engineering provides you with a better explanation beforehand, which of course would be provided to the applicant as well.
Just so we're on the same page and we're dealing with expert testimony, as you said before. Okay.
Okay. We have a motion and a second with a suggestion for a staff report from engineering at the second reading.
Correct.
Thoughts?
I can support that on first reading. We can talk more later.
Can you support that on first reading?
Most definitely, yeah.
Okay. All those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No nays. Ordinance is adopted on first reading with staff instructions to come back with that engineering report at the second reading, which will be on Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024.
To clarify, was that amending condition number 2 for the 69%?
I don't remember the condition number, but it was the one that your recommendation was no more than 60%.
And then we're amending it to say up to 60% exclusively for pools.
Up to 69%. The additional 9% is only for pools
or pool decks.
or pool enclosures. Right.
Encompass.
And at second reading, depending on the engineering report, that could be changed back. I mean, we don't, depending on what
Right. So we're going to ask the city engineer for clarification about the driveways, see if there's alternate materials that they can use for that. And then I think we're on the same page about the lot coverage ISR, but yeah, ISR is engineering calculations and lot coverage is all encompassing. It's not just aesthetics. It takes into consider the thing too. But
and we would like you to work with Brian to come back. We want a comprehensive report at the second hearing.
Yep. Okay.
Fair enough? Everybody's clear? Yes. Whew. Okay, we good to forge? We have one more. You want to do this, or you want to take a break real quick, or we're going to forge ahead?
Forge ahead.
Okay. Last, well, not the last public hearing. Second public hearing and second reading of ordinance 1565, adopting a rezoning of folio number 201-600-0000 with an address of 8702 Overlook Drive. I'll open the public hearing and ask anybody who intends to speak on this matter to stand and be sworn in by the city clerk.
We have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Thank you. Mr. Sohn, would you please poll the council for ex parte communications?
Yes, if anyone here has had an ex parte communication regarding this matter, please state so now. If it has been in writing, please provide a copy of that to the clerk for the record. If it has been, whether it was in writing or orally, please state with whom you had that communication, when that took place, and the sum and substance of the communication, starting with Council Member Fernandez.
I do not have any since the first reading and any of the letters that were included in our packet.
I've had none also.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
Thank you.
Okay, Community Development Director Mike Sherman is here to explain. Good evening.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight is a second public hearing and a second reading of an ordinance adopting a rezoning at RZP 23-04. The address is 8702 Overlook Drive. The folio number is 201-600-000. And again, this is second and reading and second public hearing. Okay, so a little bit of background again. The location of the property is at the intersection of Overlook Drive, and it is has access from Grove Hill. The current zoning is R10. The future land use map category is DMU 35. The density allowed with the DMU 35 category for residential is 35 units per acre. It's the zoning category that they're trying to have the council grant them is the PD, and it's a little over or just under half an acre. Per our land development code, as the council knows, all rezonings in the downtown CRA area must be through PD. The applicant's intent is to develop 8 townhomes on the site, 4 buildings with 2 units per building. The property is surrounded by single-family uses to the north, south, and east, and multifamily uses to the west. I did it again. I keep hitting the wrong button. Okay, this is the conceptual plan. As you can see, there's 4 buildings located on the property with the driveway in between there. The site will be, this one actually is Overlook Drive. It's going to be accessed from a detailed site plan, preliminary plat, subdivision plan will follow at a future date. And as we discussed last time, there's a whole bunch of waivers. We have about 12 waivers. And I want to get back into one reason why we have that. As we discussed in the last public hearing, and the last time we had the meeting here, the public hearing here, is we're required, based on our land development code, is to pick a zoning category that most closely matches the ultimate product and that the developer wants to have at the end of the development process. And we're working with a number of different codes and plans to develop in this area. We look at our comprehensive plan, we look at the CRA plan, we look at the downtown zoning overlay district, and we look at our land development code. And we try and fit all those together. One of the reasons we have so many waivers in here is because while the downtown development overlay zoning district clearly gives us how you're going to develop commercial properties, it's somewhat lacking on how you're going to develop residential properties in areas that are predominantly, at this point, single-family homes, single-family lots. But because of the CRA plan, we're trying to increase our densities to the 35 dwelling units per acre. So these are all the deviations from the code that we have for townhouses, which is a RMF code, residential multifamily code. So there's about about 25 different deviations. We discussed them last time. We can discuss them this time if you would want. The applicant is in the audience, and they might be able to lend some more information on the waivers they're requesting. Another thing required in our PD and our downtown is that when rezonings are proposed, that developers need to give us what building elevations will look like. The CRA plan, or downtown overlay zoning district, requires and encourages single-family homes and other development to, as much as possible, have that Mediterranean architecture look. The applicant has come up with this elevation. It mirrors somewhat of some of the other projects that were approved, and this would be the front elevation. This is the rear elevations. Here's one side elevation, and there's the other side elevation. So again, what we need to do is we compare those elevations with the architectural standards and guidelines in the downtown overlay zoning district. We're looking at massing, the building facades, the roof form details and materials. We look at window treatments, building entrances, features and details. And the design of this building elevation that the applicant has come up, we believe meets all those tests for new buildings in the downtown overlay zoning district. On December 19th, the Planning Commission and staff reviewed the zoning reclassification and recommended approval that this development is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. On June 4th, the council looked at this ordinance and approved it on first reading. Staff is making a recommendation at the second reading for approval, and I can stand and answer any questions that we may have. There are also some conditions in the ordinance itself, and so we would hope that those conditions would be adopted as part of this PD.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Are there members of the public who wish to comment on this item? Seeing none, does the applicant wish to make any remarks? Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council.
Thank you for your patience.
Chandra Frederick, I'm sorry for the record. I'm a land use planning consultant, and I do not have any additional comments. I'd like to thank Mr. Sherman for the thorough report and for working with us on this project. We do stand for any questions that you may have. I know that we had a very thoughtful conversation a couple of weeks ago, so we stand for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your patience. So, council members, are there questions? Okie dokie. Seeing none, I will close the hearing and ask the clerk to read the title of the ordinance.
An ordinance of the City of Temple Terrace, Florida, rezoning .404 acres of real property within the downtown community redevelopment area located approximately 1,140 feet south of the intersection of Overlook Drive and Bush Boulevard with an address of 8702 Overlook Drive, folio number 201600-0000, from zoning classification single-family residential R10 to plan development PD, providing for amendment to the official zoning map of the city, providing severability and effective date, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council, is there a motion?
Move to approve ordinance 1565, adopted rezoning of folio numbers 201600-0000 with an address of 8702 Overlook Drive on second public hearing.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion of the motion. If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No nays. The ordinance is adopted unanimously on second reading. Is there any council business, carryover council business from previous meetings? Okay. Is there any new business or board reports?
I got nothing.
Seeing none, city manager report. City attorney's report. Anybody, directors? Because nobody's going to stand up now, are they? Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for all your work, and thank you for those who've persevered with us. We will be adjourned.